What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? Welcome to Auto 3 Garage. Today we going to be looking at this video, how American cars got so bad. Anyway, we're going to look at this video and yeah, let's get into it. And probably look at another video. Anyway, let's get to it.
In late 2008, the CEOs of General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler pulled up to the Russell Senate office building in DC following a 500-mile road trip from Detroit.
Before we start, let me know y'all favorite car brand. Is it GM? Well, y'all favorite car manufacturer. Is it General Motors, GM, Ford, or Chrysler? Y'all let me know. I'm gonna say GM. I like GM, so they are pretty cool.
Detroit. Each drove one of their company's newest, most fuel-efficient hybrid vehicles, Chevrolet Malibu, Ford Escape, and Chrysler Aspen, in an effort to repair their tarnished public image. The previous month, they'd traveled to DC by private jet, and, well, the media didn't love the optics of CEOs burning tens of thousands of dollars of jet fuel in order to beg for a bailout. This time, though, the strategy was to be more conciliatory. Quote, "We're here today because we made mistakes," General Motors' Rick Wagoner told the Senate Banking Committee. Quote, "We're sorry to be asking for this support." This trio of American auto manufacturers had long been referred to as the Big Three based on their historical dominance of not only the US, but the world auto industry. And yet, here in the United States, the country where Henry Ford invented the Model T and cars shaped post-war culture, the three companies that had built that legacy were failing. Though the decline occurred quickly, the circumstances leading up to it did not. In the mid-century, the auto industry was relatively unregulated and vehicles were big, loud, and dirty. But legislation in the early 60s started to target air pollution and automobile safety through efforts like emission standards, which required automakers to cut hydrocarbon and oxides of nitrogen emissions by more than 50% by 1975, and essentially made the popular muscle cars of the 50s and 60s extinct. This era of regulation also included the implementation of seatbelts and bumpers, which, while inarguably worthwhile, shook up the pecking order of the industry. Everyone had to change, which made it easier for newer competitors to step in. Japan was the biggest threat. In 1958, Toyota introduced the first Japanese car into the US market, the Toyota Crown, and over the next decade, others would join like Honda, Nissan, Mitsubishi, and Mazda. The timing couldn't have been better, as Americans faced not one, but two oil crises during the 1970s. The more fuel-efficient Japanese vehicles were increasingly attractive, and the country
Companies are smart. Them Japanese companies, Toyota, and other ones that they mentioned are very smart. You know how small them cars are and still are, or back in that time it was like pretty small. So like I said, like if somebody could get great fuel efficiency out of that, who's not going to go towards that? Especially back in those times and all.
export
And it's going to be a way better choice than the Chevy cars, like the GM, Fords, and all that. Because them cars back then, the Fords and all that, them cars was pretty big and bulky. And yeah, they were some gas guzzlers, I bet. But anyway,
the United States,
these Japanese cars and all that was much smaller.
It's more than tripled in 5 years to upward of 650,000 cars delivered to America by 1980. This could have been the point when American car manufacturers recognized the risk of volatile fuel prices as an opportunity, and they could have prioritized smaller, lighter, and more fuel-efficient cars. But instead, the Big Three, partially driven by government policy incentives, put their energy into trucks and sport utility vehicles. This focus on trucks and SUVs allowed Japanese automakers to corner the passenger car market. In 2006, of the Consumer Reports list of the 10
and what's so crazy, these companies now like Ford and GM, they starting to come out with like cars that's like efficient and all that compared to back in the day. So Toyota and them, they already got their upper hand, or been had a upper hand on that end. But if you think about Americans, the American car manufacturers and stuff, they just focused on the dollars, the horsepower,
best cars.
But I'm glad it's like that too. Like I'm glad they didn't taking another route, because like when we have like certain amount of cars on today, if they take a different route and all that.
All 10 were Japanese. At the same time, the American auto industry lacked the offshoring capacity of Japanese automakers and depended more highly on costlier American labor. In the United States, the United Auto Workers Union was a source of pride, and yet pensions, healthcare, salaries, and legacy benefits all added up significantly, with labor accounting for roughly 8% of a car's price. Japanese auto workers weren't unionized, so as Americans experienced yet another oil crisis in the 2000s, they once again looked to smaller, more fuel-efficient cars, mostly made in Japan. American auto manufacturing figures continued to decline, dropping by nearly 50% compared to just a decade earlier. The Great Recession loomed, and the economy started its precipitous fall, triggered by defaults on subprime mortgages. Though seemingly distinct, car sales were also wrapped up in the subprime mortgage crisis. In fact, some 24% of automobile sales in 2006 were financed by home equity lines of credit, and once people started failing their mortgages, they also missed car payments just as others pulled back spending in general in fear of the recession. Panic gripped the Big Three as the threat of bankruptcy increased, so they formed an argument that their failure would be a problem not just for Detroit, but for America. The companies asserted that the crumbling of the American auto industry could ripple across all parts of the American economy and beyond, endangering supply chains and dealer networks beyond their own. They testified in front of Congress saying as much and requesting billions after disclosing they'd burnt through $18 billion in lines of credit. Senators were skeptical. A vote on a version of the bailout failed, but eventually, as the risks of bankruptcy grew ever
God damn, 18 billion?
more concrete, President Bush went around the legislative branch and approved $17 billion in immediate funds, with more to follow once Obama took office. With the bailouts came change. Given a lifeline by the federal government, GM literally became a new company as the General Motors of old went into bankruptcy, became the Motors Liquidation Company, and sold its valuable assets and name over to the new government-backed GM. To get back into fighting shape, this new company shed. It shut down the Hummer, Saturn, and Pontiac brands and sold Saab within a year. It cut down its plants, it cut a third of its employees in the US, 35% of its American executives, and it vowed to maximize efficiency with its trucks and to begin to build the cheaper, fuel-efficient.
Does that something that like you work for a car manufacturer and then they lay you off and all that? Like, could y'all just imagine that? Like, it was pretty common, you know, back in Detroit and all that, where, well, yeah, that was pretty common, where everything was closing down and stuff. It's just so crazy. But can you just imagine getting cut off from a car manufacturer, and especially all the hours and stuff that you put into? It's so crazy. The auto industry is always changing and all that, and you get scared.
Future.
Like not too long ago, we got like a big behind Hyundai plant and all that. And I'm kind of skeptical about it and all that. A lot of people wasn't happy about it, you know, coming in, but it did allow more jobs to pull in and stuff. But dang, I was thinking like, dang, what if the place gets shut down or something? But I mean, it might stay running for a long period of time. But Hyundai pretty good. It was a pretty good brand. But I mean, there's so many car factories that been running up and then they end up eventually shutting down and stuff.
The new Chrysler followed a similar strategy. It'd lean into the brands that worked, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Chrysler. It'd make the suddenly in-demand sedans better, and it'd lean on the expertise of its new partner, Italian manufacturer Fiat, to overhaul its light passenger vehicles. Even Ford, able to narrowly escape financial ruin without federal funds, signaled that it was pivoting. It had rid itself of luxury brands like Aston Martin, Land Rover, and Jaguar in the years leading up to the recession. This, along with the development of the Fusion, Focus, and bringing along the Fiesta, put Ford in a position to lead what seemed like a quickly transitioning American automotive sector. Taken together, America's Big Three had been punished for pursuing strategies stuck in the past and were now vowing to figure out the smaller, fuel-efficient cars of the future. Or so it seemed. Fast forward 10 years after the world hailed Ford as the future Ford company so proactive it was able to outmaneuver the recession, and you find a very different company. A car company telling the world it would no longer be making cars. In 2018, Ford announced that it was getting out of the business of manufacturing or selling any passenger cars beyond the Mustang in the American market. No more Fusions or Fiestas, no more Focus. In just a decade, a 180, and one that seemed inevitable within the company given lagging sales and build issues. They weren't the first of the domestic giants to make the pivot either. Chrysler made the move in 2016 when it announced that it would be ending the production of the Dodge Dart and Chrysler 200, the brand's two economical sedans, and only continuing the production of the muscular Challenger and the comparatively luxurious Chrysler 300.
I feel like the Fords, they probably wasn't like selling like how they thought it would. A lot of people probably wasn't like into them. I mean, the reputation and all that was tarnished. So, being that you already got Toyota, Honda, and all these other cars that was, very reliable and, got good fuel efficiency, I feel like everybody already had a mind made up. Now, with this Challenger with the Chrysler, I mean, the Challengers are pretty popular. They always been popular. Your Chrysler 300's always been popular, or getting popular or more popularized and all that. So these are cars that everybody usually go to. Like I said, I feel like horsepower and the status be selling these cars right here. Because I guarantee, if they had Challenger V6s, right? I mean, it wouldn't been popular if compared to if they had a V8 or the V8 with the supercharger. So it wouldn't be that popular and all that. The cars would be overlooked. Chrysler as a whole brand would be overlooked. I mean, even though the Chryslers are luxurious, I mean, it is a go-to choice, though. Them Chryslers are nice.
GM likewise
Challenges, Chargers,
By the
whatever.
2020s, it had announced the end of the production of the Chevy Impala, Cruze, Volt, and Malibu, the Cadillac CT6 and XTS, and the Buick LaCrosse. Within a decade of nearly bleeding out on account of a lack of intentional adjustments for the future of the car market that seemed green, economical, and small, America's Big Three had all but stopped making cars for the American market entirely. In an era that experts refer to as perhaps the most disruptive decade in a century of automobile manufacturing, it was then telling that the Big Three all announced that in the wake of cars, they'd now be again focusing on SUVs and trucks. Now, on the surface, such a move makes
SUVs and trucks are, pretty popular and all that, and are being used more. And I'm pausing because I'm trying to talk in between and all that, just give my own little unbiased 2 cents and all that. But yeah, trucks, pickup trucks, pretty common, popular and all that.
sense as the
And I feel like it's just depending on your area and the type of line of work you do, or what you need it for, honestly. 'Cause you got some areas where you just see smaller cars and that's what people drive and all that, and then you got some areas where they got big SUVs and a lot of trucks and all that. A lot of people having a lot of big families and stuff and all that. So
demand for SUVs and light trucks in the US
the demand is up, though.
has appeared insatiable since the Great Recession. But that demand is rather artificial in nature. Auto bailouts may have saved jobs, restructured C-suites, gave core American companies a new lease on life, and presented a future of more reasonable and efficient American-made vehicles, but they didn't fix a critical shortcoming in the American car market: the definition as to what exactly counts as a car. This is a graph of the share of total light vehicle sales between passenger cars and light trucks. Nearing 80% in recent years, the share of light trucks in the US has hit a truly absurd number. But this number becomes easier to fathom once one considers what is actually labeled a truck. This, for example, by definition, is a truck, as is this and this. And that's thanks to legislation dating back to the 1970s. With the energy crisis of the 70s came a push to mandate better fuel efficiency. With that mandate came the Corporate Average Fuel Economy Standards, which allowed the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to set fuel efficiency mile per gallon standards on passenger cars. In doing so, there needed to be a definition as to what was a passenger car and what was not. So came this definition for a light truck: 6,000 pounds or less, designed to transport property or people, or generally designed to work off-road.
Introducing the new BF Goodrich All-Terrain KO3 tire. Legendary toughness made tougher. BF Goodrich, what are you building for?
In the past at college, I've struggled with overusing the same words again and again in my essays. I do a lot of writing.
These qualities, especially the latter, are all pretty nebulous in nature. Aside from weight, they simply don't exist in black and white. But the ability to match these qualifiers comes with an advantage: a lower required miles per gallon. These lagging fuel efficiency requirements are the bedrock of what's referred to as the SUV loophole. But building on that, another component of this loophole has to do with the 1964 chicken tax, legislation that puts a retaliatory tariff of 25% on trucks manufactured abroad. Another legal particularity that has made trucks, and therefore SUVs, a safe bet for domestic automotive manufacturers. Now, over the years, foreign automotives have adapted. Toyota makes trucks here, Honda makes its SUVs here, and Hyundai here, but the chicken tax presents further justification for domestic manufacturers to build SUVs, as their competition is hamstrung by the fact that they too have to employ American workers to build SUVs that effectively count as trucks in the US. While not a loophole, a final justification as to why the Big Three have turned their businesses back to trucks and increasingly only trucks is the fact that the profit margins are just better. There isn't much of a difference from sedans in terms of labor requirements. While they're bigger, the additional material is negligible. But because they're so advantaged through the SUV loophole, domestic manufacturers have spent decades marketing high-yielding SUVs and trucks as safer, more reliable, more capable, and just plain necessary for every and all Americans, urban or rural, blue or white collar. While Big Three executives will mention high demand for light trucks as the reason they've given up on cars, their strategy and marketing created that very demand. With this focus, the Big Three ceded market share and today only comprise 40% of the US industries, a far cry from their glory days. But part of their disinterest in competing in the car market has to do with the fact that they're no longer very good at it. Consumers just don't trust US automakers. In 2024, Chrysler, Ford, and GM initiated the first, second, and fourth most recalls amongst car brands in the US, respectively. In 2025, no Detroit brand cracked the top 10 in Consumer Reports auto reliability rankings, and only one time has a big...
Bro, look at that. Subaru, they get some good cars. Lexus, pretty good brand. Toyota, you know, those the same. Honda, pretty good. Acura. BMW, I don't know why I even on the list. BMW or Audi, I don't know why they on the list. But damn. Mazda, Porsche. Damn, Porsche. Oh, hold up. Oh, okay. So this 2023. Okay. Damn, Porsche. Where Porsche at? Huh.
Big Three brand, Buick, cracked the top 11 in the last 3 years. Beyond rankings and recall statistics, there's been some reputational black eyes along the way too. While far smaller in scale, Chrysler, like Volkswagen, found itself embroiled in an emissions testing scandal in the 2010s. Certain Jeeps and Ram trucks built from 2014 and 2016 were found to be violating emission standards even though they had passed lab tests before hitting the market. This resulted in over $1 billion in settlements and fees for Fiat Chrysler, and eventually a guilty plea to a criminal conspiracy to cheat emission testing. In 2025, GM ordered a recall of some 600,000 vehicles powered by the L87 engine. The general consensus was that it was a long time coming. In fact, far too long. For 6 years, consumers have been registering complaints about the massive 6.2-liter V8 that powers Suburbans, Tahoes, Silverados, Escalades, Sierras, Yukons, and any other big GM vehicle, completely and catastrophically failing within 100,000 miles of ownership. GM looked into it internally in 2022, 23, and 24, but nothing came of those investigations. Not until the NHTSA got involved did it come to light that certain crankshaft, connecting rod, and engine bearing malfunctions were common across some 28,000 registered.
I was going to say, what was the problems with the engines and all that? I think it was having some lifter issues also.
Complaints. And more troubling, some 12 crashes and injuries along with 42 fires were potentially associated with these engine problems. Across the board, the Big Three just don't make very dependable or trustworthy vehicles anymore. And increasingly, it doesn't seem like they aim to. Take Chrysler, which merged with PSA and became a part of the new Dutch automotive group Stellantis in 2021. By 2023, after some bold restructuring on the American side in brands like Jeep and Dodge, Stellantis produced a record year, turning a $20 billion profit, paying out $7.5 billion to its shareholders, and compensating its CEO with $40 million for the year. The massive year has come with costs, though. What set the stage for 2023 was a combination of price increases across its American fleet of Dodges and Jeeps, in concert with a series of factory layoffs and the closure of an entire assembly facility. The real cost of the short-term boost became apparent quickly, with factory workers going on strike, the Jeep and Dodge brands taking reputational hits as signs of corner cutting and cheap assembly became more apparent, and their new cars sitting on the lots waiting to sell for days longer and longer on average. But the strategy isn't changing. After a bumpy 2024, Stellantis went into 2025 with another round of layoffs, and while they've paused stock buyback programs, shareholders did vote to maintain shareholder dividend payouts. For some, then, Stellantis is working. It's making them money. But for someone who happens to own a Stellantis car or work in a Stellantis factory, the situation feels different. And therein lies the problem. The short-sighted business strategy of Detroit automakers has kept the Big Three afloat in a post-recession market, but it's all but ensured that they struggle to innovate, maintain any semblance of quality control, and get passed up by a host of ambitious upstarts. There are, of course, American car companies succeeding. While Detroit's Big Three have turned back to their historically tried and true, domestic manufacturers like Tesla and increasingly Rivian have helped usher in a new era of American auto innovation. Tesla has dominated
Rivians are pretty dope and all that. I've seen them like up close and all that. They look good in person. The Rivians and all that, they look good in person. Teslas, of course, been seeing Teslas like for a while and stuff. They pretty cool and all that, but it's just
vehicle market share in the US across the 2010s and early 2020s, and the story of its rise has been well documented. In some ways, the company built from the ground up around electric vehicles has advantages over legacy manufacturers trying to make the hasty pivot into the EV market. Rather than retrofitting and retraining, Tesla had the benefit of starting with electric as its sole focus. Much of the same can be said about Rivian in this decade with light trucks. While still very much at the front end of its rise, the company.
And what's so crazy, you got the other car manufacturers trying to, do electric vehicles and all that. Most of them, failed. Let's talk about the Dodge Charger and all that. Nobody didn't want that. Y'all really going to go from what y'all known for your reputation and stuff, and just to shift over to electric? It don't work like that, especially like in the auto world and stuff. It don't work like that and stuff. Can you just imagine them start putting like V6s or like electric motors in like the big boy Chargers and all that? Like nobody not gonna buy it or stuff. Nobody ain't. Now what other car manufacturers? I would say Chevy. I know they got that the Hummer. That one seemed to been getting like some good feedback and all that. Seeing that in person looked pretty cool and all that. But like Ford, they just can't shift over like that. Like, with the reputation and all that. Now Tesla, Rivian, all that, them coming out the gate, providing electric vehicles and stuff. I mean, that's great. Now if Tesla tried to go over and put a V8 in the Tesla or Rivian, it won't sell anything,
could well do for electric trucks.
That's just my 2 cents and all that, and I'm not even like hitting anything deep, just rambling.
It's what Tesla did for electric cars a decade prior. Unlike the legacy manufacturers trying to keep up in the EV space, Tesla nor Rivian had to retrofit assembly plants or business.
Yeah, see this right here, the Bolt EV. Like, come on, Chevy, y'all gonna come out with this bean right here? Y'all gonna come out with this? You can't do it. You just can't.
Models or deal with labor unions to accommodate what increasingly feels like the future of automotives. In this way, the efforts of the Big Three to maintain a foothold and some relevance in the EV space seems admirable, given that Chevy and Ford had the second and third highest US EV market shares at 5.7% and 5.4% respectively in 2023. But foreign EVs are pushing their way into the US too. Hyundais and Kias are eating into market share with popular and relatively affordable EVs, while Japanese manufacturers are preparing to launch US EVs like Honda's Prologue. And beyond the future, the big three are giving ground in the present. Take the #1 selling vehicle in the US in 2024. It was a vehicle classified as a light truck assembled in the US, but for the first time in decades, it wasn't the Ford F-150, but rather Toyota's RAV4. Perhaps it's just for a year, but it is telling that in the US, in a car category set to uniquely benefit American companies in light truck manufacturing, it is a Japanese vehicle that Americans have come to trust as a reliable, versatile, and dependable vehicle more so than any other. Whether it's an EV,
And they look way cooler and all that. The Toyotas, Hyundai, Lexus, they cars would be looking way like cooler and all that. Like, I don't know why, but they do.
then
Compared to like the American brands and stuff, they look all boring and basic, like, you know, for like SUV wise or like the crossovers.
SUVs, the market is tightening for America's big three. The walls are closing in, and for now at least, it's not looking like Detroit really cares.
Like I said, it's so crazy that you could work for like a car manufacturer, especially a well-known one, and they just screw everybody over, bro. It's just so crazy.
To keep up.
I think it's just with greed and all that. Just it's always the
As some
people.
of you know, I travel a lot.
It's always people that be up top, always screwing other people.
Often
over.
upwards of 100 nights a year.
When they
One
make
tool
mistakes.
I find to be super worthwhile when traveling is our sponsor.
I think that's gonna be pretty much it. Hold on. So that's gonna be pretty much it. That's gonna be pretty much it. I'm finna get going. I'm finna go to get this video out. But anyway, I hope y'all having a great one. I'm having a great one. But yeah, let me know y'all thoughts down below. I think it's crazy. Let me know if y'all trust American car brands and stuff. I mean, Detroit, man, it's so crazy. Like the downhill, they went down, man. It's just don't make no sense. And then for people like to be laid off and stuff, it's crazy. That's why I'm glad I'm not like in the auto industry, like doing like car manufacturer, because anything could change and stuff. Like economic crisis could happen and you be shut down or something. You can't make the cars no more. So I'm glad to be in a profession where I'm needed no matter what and stuff. But, you know, shout out to the people who be putting our cars together and stuff. It just, you know, sucks half the time. And most of these cars be sitting on these lots and stuff a lot for a long period of time and stuff. And I know GM. Well, yeah, Chevy cars. My mom, she had a GMC and she been having problems with that light. And I know when she, you know, take it to a dealer, they be giving her the runaround and stuff. But that's like for another video topic we could probably talk about. But it's just so crazy how stuff could just trickle down and all. But anyway, I hope y'all have a great one. That's just my little 2 cents in rant. So I'm finna get going and 8.